Hashim sat alone in his study, the dim glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the room. His fingers drummed against the polished wood of his desk, slow, deliberate, like a man counting down to something irreversible. On the other side of the desk sat Oria, his oldest and most trusted friend, the only man who knew Hashim's deepest fears. "It has to be convincing," Hashim said, voice low. "No room for doubt." Oria leaned forward, his expression grave. "The accident will look real. The wrecked car, the blood, the witnesses, everything. But Hashim, are you prepared for what comes after?" Hashim didn't answer right away. His mind flashed to his three sons: Maddo, the responsible eldest; Joro, the cunning middle child; and Bako, the ambitious youngest. Did they love him, or had they spent their lives waiting for his fortune? He clenched his fists. "If they mourn me, I'll know their hearts. If they fight over my wealth before my body is even cold," his voice hardened, "then I'll know the truth." Oria exhaled sharply but nodded. "Then it's done. By tomorrow, the whole city will believe you're dead." The next morning, a thunderous knock shook the mansion's front door. Maddo, still dressed in sleepwear, rushed to open it. Oria stood on the other side, his clothes torn, his face streaked with dirt and what looked like blood. Maddo's breath caught. "Oria! What?" Oria's voice was raw, broken. "There's been an accident." Behind Maddo, Joro and Bako froze in the hallway. Oria looked at each of them, his next words dropping like stones. "Your father is gone." Silence. Then, Maddo collapsed to his knees. Joro's eyes flicked to the family vault. And Bako? He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He smiled. The grand hall of the Hashim estate was draped in black. Silent mourners shuffled in, their whispers weaving through the air like ghosts. At the front, a closed casket stood, empty, though no one knew that. Hashim watched from the shadows. Disguised as a servant, he kept his head low, his heart pounding as he studied his sons. Maddo stood closest to the casket, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. His hands trembled as he placed a single white rose on the lid, his father's favorite. "You were everything to me," Maddo whispered, so softly only Hashim's straining ears caught it. A flicker of warmth stirred in Hashim's chest, but then his gaze shifted. Joro was already in the corner, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, the will hasn't been read yet." "No, don't worry, I'll handle it." Hashim's stomach twisted. Then there was Bako. The youngest son wasn't mourning. He was networking, shaking hands with influential guests, accepting condolences with a politician's smile. When he thought no one was looking, he checked his watch, impatient, as if waiting for the funeral to end so the real games could begin. The family lawyer's voice echoed in the silent study. "To my eldest Maddo, I leave the family home and my personal journals." Maddo's breath hitched, not at the value, but at the meaning. His father's private thoughts, his heart. Joro's pen scratched against paper as he calculated his own inheritance. Bako's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then, the twist. "The majority of my wealth remains locked." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Until my final wish is fulfilled." The brothers froze. "What wish?" Bako demanded. The lawyer slid 3 envelopes across the table. "Your father's last words. For each of you. Alone." The moment the lawyer left, the brothers tore open their letters with trembling hands. Maddo's letter. "Son, if you're reading this, I failed you. I let doubt poison my heart. But if you ever loved me, do this one thing. Go to the old oak tree where we used to picnic. Dig beneath its roots. What you find there is yours alone." Maddo didn't hesitate. He grabbed a shovel and left immediately, tears blurring his vision. Joro's letter. "Joro, you were always the clever one. So be clever now. The combination to my private vault is hidden in the last place you'd expect, inside your mother's wedding portrait. Take what you believe you deserve." Joro's lips curled into a smirk. Finally, a game worth playing. Bako's letter. "Bako, power was always your ambition. So here's your chance. The deed to the company is yours, but only if you can claim it before midnight. The key is with the person who hated me most. Find them. Bako's eyes gleamed. A challenge. A race. He was already reaching for his car keys. From a hidden room, Hashim watched the security feeds, his heart pounding. Mato was on his knees in the moonlight, digging frantically beneath the oak tree. When his shovel struck metal, he unearthed a small chest, filled not with gold, but with childhood drawings, a worn-out baseball glove, and a note. The only treasure I ever needed was you. Mato broke down, clutching the glove to his chest. Joro had pried open the portrait frame, only to find a single slip of paper. The real combination, your brother's birthday, the one you always forgot. Joro's face twisted in rage. He'd never remembered Mato's birthday. Bako had stormed into the office of his father's rival, demanding the key, only to be met with laughter. Hashim told me you'd come. He said to give you this. The rival tossed him a fake key and a note. A king who betrays his blood will never keep his crown. As midnight struck, the brothers returned to the estate, each carrying their failures. Then the lights flicked on. Hashim stood in the doorway, alive. Now you know, he said quietly. And so do I. The air in the room turned electric. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, Mato stumbled forward, eyes wide. Father? His voice cracked with disbelief, then joy. He lunged, wrapping Hashim in a crushing embrace. You're alive! Thank God you're alive! Hashim held him tight, relief flooding his veins. This was the son he'd hoped for. Then came the hiss of steel. Joro had pulled a knife from his coat, his face a mask of cold fury. You scheming old bastard! You played us. Hashim didn't flinch. I needed to know where your loyalties lay. Joro's laugh was razor sharp. Loyalty? You left me digging through dirt like a beggar. Bako hadn't moved. His fists clenched, his voice eerily calm. You humiliated me in front of your enemies. Was that your plan? To make me a joke? Hashim met his gaze. Number, to show you what happens when you chase power without honor. Hashim stepped back, his voice ringing with finality. Mato, this house, my legacy is yours. You proved yourself tonight. Mato's breath caught. Father, I don't... Joro! Hashim turned to his middle son. You'll keep your share of the wealth, but you'll leave this family. Tonight, Joro's knife clattered to the floor. You're disowning me? You disowned yourself, Hashim said softly. Then, Bako. The youngest son stood rigid, his pride warring with something darker. Hashim's voice broke. Bako, I had such hopes for you. A beat of silence. Then Bako turned on his heel and walked out, without a word, without a glance back. The door slammed like a gunshot. Alone with Mato, Kendi sagged into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Was it worth it? Mato whispered. Kendi closed his eyes. I had to know. Outside, tires screeched as Joro's car tore down the driveway. Somewhere in the city, Bako was already dialing allies, plotting his next move. And Kendi? He'd won the truth, but at what cost? The weeks after Hashim's return were anything but peaceful. Mato tried to hold the family together, but the estate felt like a hollow shell. The servants whispered. The phone rang with lawyers, creditors, and opportunists smelling blood in the water. And then, the first blow landed. A lawsuit arrived at dawn. Joro had challenged the will, claiming Hashim's fraudulent death voided its terms. His legal team was ruthless, dragging private family matters into court records. Hashim stared at the papers, his hands steady but his soul weary. He's always been good at twisting words. Mato slammed his fist on the table. He's tearing us apart for money. Then came Bako's move. A business magazine hit the stands with a blistering headline. Bako Hashim launches rival firm. My father's legacy is corrupt. Inside, the interview was worse. Bako spun a tale of a tyrant father, a broken family, and his own vision to rebuild their empire, without the Hashim name. Hashim read it in silence, then set it down with terrifying calm. He's not just leaving, he's burning the bridge behind him. Mato looked sick. He's using our pain as his publicity. That night, Hashim stood on the balcony, watching distant city lights. Mato joined him, voice raw. Was this what you wanted? To know the truth even if it destroyed us? Hashim's grip tightened on the railing. I thought I could fix things after, but some cracks run too deep. A long silence. Then, Joro will win in court, Mato said quietly. He's too smart, and the law's on his side. And Bako, he'll make sure the world remembers you as a monster. Hashim closed his eyes. And you? Mato's answer was firm. I remember the father who taught me to ride a bike, who held me when mom died. That's the man I'll fight for. The next morning, Hashim made a call. Oria, he said, voice steel. It's time. His old friend exhaled. You're sure? Once we do this, there's no... Do it. By sundown, every major newspaper received an anonymous package, a file of documents, Joro's hidden debts, Bako's blackmailed business partners, and a single typed line, true legacy isn't wealth, it's the damage you leave behind. The bombshell documents detonated across the city like a chain reaction. Joro's creditors descended, men with sharp suits and sharper threats. His lawsuit crumbled as his own financial crimes spilled into the open. Bako's investors fled overnight, leaving his new company in ruins. The media turned on him, dredging up every lie he'd ever told. And Hashim? He watched it all unfold from his study, his face unreadable. Mato stormed in, eyes blazing. You leaked their secrets? Father, this isn't justice. It's destruction. Hashim didn't deny it. They made their choices. And now you're burning everything down. Mato's voice broke. When does it end? A knock at the door silenced them. Oria entered, pale. Hashim, Bako's here, and he's not alone. Bako stood in the grand hall, flanked by armed men. His once polished veneer was gone, his clothes rumpled, his eyes wild. You ruined me, he spat. So now I'll ruin you. Hashim stepped forward, unflinching. You did that yourself. I just showed the world who you really are. Bako's laugh was jagged. And who are you? A liar who faked his death to manipulate his own sons? Mato moved between them. Bako, stop this. Walk away. Or what? Bako's hand hovered near his coat, where the outline of a gun bulged. You'll forgive me? The air turned to ice. Then, a gunshot. Mato gasped, staggering back. But it wasn't him who'd been hit. Joro stood in the doorway, smoke curling from his pistol. Bako's men froze as their leader collapsed, clutching his shoulder. Enough, Joro snarled. I'm many things, but I'm not a killer. Unlike you. Bako writhed on the floor, his blood staining the marble. You traitor! Joro ignored him, locking eyes with Hashim. I came to withdraw the lawsuit, but it seems we're past that. Hashim's voice was barely audible. Why? Joro's smirk was bitter. Because unlike him, I still have a soul. As Bako was dragged away by his own betrayed men, Kendi sank into a chair, suddenly ancient. Mato gripped Joro's shoulder. You saved us. Joro shook him off. Don't. I didn't do it for you. Kendi looked at his two remaining sons, one who loved him, one who hated him, but couldn't kill him. And he finally understood. Some bonds, no matter how broken, never truly snap. Blood still stained the marble floor when the letter arrived. It was delivered by a courier in a black suit, sealed with Hashim's personal crest, the one he hadn't used in years. Mato tore it open with trembling hands. If you're reading this, the test is over, and I am truly gone. Joro snatched the paper. What the hell does that mean? Hashim had actually died. The accident was staged, but the heart attack that followed wasn't. Oria revealed the truth with tears in his eyes. He knew his time was short. The doctors gave him weeks, so he used them to ensure his legacy and to protect you, Mato. Mato's knees buckled. No, he was just here. He talked to us. Oria shook his head. That was the last of his strength. He's been gone since the gunshot. Joro backed away, face ashen. You're saying we just fought a ghost? The lawyer returned, this time with a video. On screen, Hashim sat in his study, gaunt but calm. Mato, my son, you inherit everything. Not because you're the eldest, but because you're the only one who loved me as a father, not a bank account. Joro, Hashim's voice softened. I left you the offshore accounts, not to bribe you, but because I know you'll need them to outrun your demons. Go. Start over. Then shockingly, Bako, look at me. A pause. You'll find a key taped beneath this desk. It opens a locker in the city morgue. Inside is proof the men you hired tonight plan to betray you. Use it to save yourself. If you can. The screen went dark. Bako, bleeding and handcuffed in a police car outside, suddenly laughed. A raw, broken sound. He beat me from beyond the grave. Mato stepped into the rain, staring at the brother who tried to kill him. Why did you do it? Bako met his eyes. Because I wanted him to look at me the way he looked at you, just once. Then the car drove away, taillights fading like dying embers. 1 year later, Mato rebuilt the family empire, but donated half its wealth to the orphanage where Hashim was raised. Joro vanished into Europe, though a single postcard arrived on Mato's birthday with 2 words. He knew. Bako? His trial made headlines. The locker's contents spared him prison, but not obscurity. On the anniversary of Hashim's death, Mato stood at the old oak tree, a baseball glove in hand. You won, father, he whispered. But was it worth the cost? The wind answered with the rustle of leaves, and for a moment, it almost sounded like laughter.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.